My people work, and the dumbest bill in America. This is Mark Fisher with Mark and the Millennials and the Millennial. Joining me today, and he's back.
I'm alive.
He's tan, he's rested, he's quarantined. It's Squirrel.
Howdy.
Ryan the Squirrel Brady. And of course, Christopher Hopkins, and who's our assistant producer, and Adam Coutura, our producer. And so today's podcast is called Let My People Work, and the dumbest bill in America, because the citizens of the United States want to go back to work. And guess who wants to go back to work, who's actually speaking out? A prominent businessman in America, Elon Musk. Elon Musk, the founder of Tesla, and he opposes any further lockdowns and basically says, you know what, people can figure this out, they're educated, if they have pre-existing conditions, if they're ill in any way, they should quarantine, but that's, they can self-quarantine, they can figure this out. But then when you really look through, of course, a lot of the details, you find out that Tesla's factory shut down.
Yeah.
And Tesla finally just was showing a profit. And they were finally getting into this good space for the company, the car company.
They were finally making economical price cars, the Model C, which everyone wanted to buy.
Which everybody wanted to buy, even though they still have all of these
backlog,
these free rebates and so forth and tax credits that are in place. But nonetheless, in spite of all that, they were at least making some progress with the company and making profit. And we have Elon Musk. We have a clip from him, and we'll talk about this. And here is the clip.
If somebody wants to stay in their house, that's great. They should be allowed to stay in their house, and they should not be compelled to leave. But to say that they cannot leave their house and they will be arrested if they do, this is fascist. This is not democratic. This is not freedom. Give people back their goddamn freedom.
That's right. Let my people work. That's what he's saying. That's how we came up with the title for this podcast, because of good old, Tesla CEO Elon Musk. Thoughts on this, Squirrel?
Bit of a wild child, Elon Musk.
Yes, he is.
I thought the factory was open because they were making ventilators. Remember he promised he would do that, or he was planning to do that?
I thought that was General Motors that's doing it, but I'm not sure if Tesla. Frankly, I don't know if Tesla got a contract to make ventilators.
Maybe they didn't get the contract, but what I think about is...
it does make you wonder, though, like if you can make ventilators and you have a lot of people there, why can't you make Teslas?
Well, exactly, unless it's underneath some government action where you're exempt, which would be interesting. I'm not really tuned into this whole, fortunately, I'm able to work remotely, so I know the majority of Americans, because there's millions
of podcast listeners. Squirrel is in cybersecurity, and so he's been stuck in a basement somewhere, and because he lives in the greater Washington area, he's been stuck in a basement doing all of this crazy stuff, probably spying on China. I'm not really sure what.
No, just managing projects. We're good.
Okay, managing projects.
Nothing too riveting, but it's fun. No, but with the whole production, it's kind of weird. I want us to beat the virus, and honestly, there's a lot of people unemployed because they need to actually their jobs require to be in a plant and be in a oh my God, retail store that actually needs to service customers. There can be augmentations to how they deliver, but you need to be in a workspace interacting with coworkers to actually produce products. Maybe if they increase the health and safety measures and social distancing within the workplace, they would have to figure out how to lay out the workplace. There would need to be some time to evaluate and test it.
So these are all the people that have jobs that have to show up at a physical location in order to be able to properly make a living and get paid, which is why they've been laid off. And with Elon Musk, he's like, I can't make cars unless I have people, and I'm not allowed to show up. And isn't that kind of fascist that I'm not allowed to make my own decisions, and the people that work here also aren't allowed to make their own decisions as to whether they want to show up and work. And obviously, Elon Musk is in this really tight space where his company
was making, as you were saying, making a profit, just about to make a profit. And I feel because a lot of companies run on bare margins. There's not a lot of wiggle room where they can say, "Hey, we're going to cease production, but we're going to keep your salaries as is." It's unfortunately a lot of companies did not plan for a pandemic. No one really did.
They certainly didn't plan for no revenue.
Yeah, no revenue.
Literally no revenue.
And it's affecting every single industry you can think of. Hell, even in the gaming industry. Because if I was actually reading about this, some developers were about to release a big game, and I found out a lot of employees of the game developers, when they release a game, they get big bonuses that they plan ahead to buy a new house, buy a new car, pay for a kid's college. Well,
these are the software developers of the games.
In games, And guess what happened? The company says, everyone stop work from home. They can't work from home. They're not going to pay them.
Why can't they work from home?
I'm really not sure. It's based on the company's decision.
Interesting. You would think, if anything, that would be the kind of industry that would be booming right now, because the children are kind of bored once they do their schoolwork, assuming that they're doing their schoolwork, which is a big assumption, and that they would at least be playing games or looking for the next big game.
Not
that they can afford to buy it,
online gaming platform called Steam, where you can buy and download any kind of computer game you can think of under the sun, they're probably having a great time right now. But the game developer specifically basically said, stop work, we're going to cease work, and then also we're not going to pay you.
Interesting.
And everyone's like, I need this money, especially if they're living in, let's say, California or a lot of the more very rich, very expensive cities to live in. They're like, I'm kind of drowning. So everyone's kind of in this bucket in every single industry, and it's you feel for everyone. I've had family impacted that lost their jobs that were in the services industry or even in the event hosting industry. It's like, we can't sustain our employees.
There's no way. There's no way.
And now they're all on unemployment care, and then all the states are being bombarded. It's
even if your restaurant is doing carry out, that's all that you can do is carry out. It's almost impossible to pay the bills just on carry out.
And
it's literally
working
impossible.
on reduced hours. You're not doing the normal maintaining of everything. It's but back to what you're saying about like Elon Musk opening the factory, like. We need to get back to work, but we need to do it in the right way, in the scheduled way. I would honestly, grant, some people may not like my opinion, but I say listen to the experts, don't listen to the politicians. Get the experts involved with the company owners and say, if you like have an action plan, like say if you do these.
But see, Squirrel, I have an issue with the fact that the United States government has allowed hospitals nationwide to basically categorize other deaths as COVID, even though the death was unrelated to COVID.
Interesting.
And that's happening across the country. And so how good is the data if that's what hospitals are allowed to do? Because apparently they're being paid more by coding certain deaths as COVID as opposed to, I don't know, heart attack, heart failure, hypertension, you name it.
Yeah, so it comes from my understanding of this whole coronavirus thing, because honestly, sometimes I put my head in the sand because I'm getting tired of seeing all these.
And you're probably tired of being quarantined and
a little bit.
Doing your cybersecurity and your gaming. Are you really Are you doing cybersecurity or really gaming down in your basement? I'm just saying.
No, hey, I do my work. I get my tasks assigned done.
We know you have attention deficit disorder, so it could be really difficult for you to focus.
Honestly, I get my work done, getting good marks. So
I'm messing with you.
I know. It's all good.
And good for you. You're still employed. That's a good thing.
Hey, thankfully it's my company, my industry, and how that all
Absolutely
works. But that's interesting about how if the hospitals are coding. I haven't really read into it, but if they are doing that, that's kind of unethical and immoral.
Later on in the podcast, we're going to talk about what is happening with the intelligence experts and what happened in that lab in China. And we're going to ask a lot of critical questions, which I know all the podcast listeners are thinking about, and maybe they haven't asked them, or maybe they're wondering the same questions that we're asking. And we're going to go to that later on in the podcast, but
can't wait.
Next up, Michigan, and of course, talking about let my people work. In Michigan, apparently, there's this huge movement, probably one of the largest movements in America. But they have this awful governor, Governor Whitmer. Trump calls her Half Whitmer.
Oh, jeez.
And Michigan protesters, they of course continue to storm the Capitol. But that's the word that is used. They're storming the Capitol. They're not burning down the Capitol.
Words
They're not
have power.
hurting anyone. But these are the citizens of Michigan, the citizens of the United States who are saying, look, I want to go back to work. No different than Elon Musk saying he wants his workers to come back and he wants to get the factory moving again and get the economy moving. Well, all these protesters in Michigan, they went to the Capitol, they protested. They've been doing this every single weekend, in some cases every day, depending on the day, depends on how many people are there. And they're being ripped apart by most of the mainstream media. And it's really interesting to see the difference between the Democrat and Republican views of this lockdown. Because generally speaking, Democrats favor the lockdown and want it extended, maybe even until June, in some cases July. And Republicans want to go back to work. But they want to do so sensibly, not recklessly. That's at least a general principle of what I'm hearing out there.
I think that message is getting missed by a lot of people, or they're not really marketing that message of saying in moderation, with restraint, with the right movements, because it's like it comes off a lot of times being reported.
Well, don't you think part of it's because the people of the United States, many of the people don't trust their government? They don't necessarily believe that the government is telling them everything that they need to know, or they're skewing numbers, or they just like the power. I mean, look, it's very natural in America to not trust government. That is actually how we were founded, right? We're founded as a country that we don't trust tyranny, and we don't believe in tyranny. So I think it's only natural for people to go to the Michigan Capitol. Look, if you've ever been to Michigan, and much of the state, of course, is rural, and where they don't have hardly any cases, and these folks are going, you know what? Why is it one size fits all, Governor Whitmer? So here's MSNBC News' version of the recent protest in Michigan. Listen for the bias out there, podcast listeners. You're gonna love MSNBC's version of the Michigan protesters and how dangerous they are, but how small number they are. So small, of course, that MSNBC still decided to report on it. We have a clip on this, and here it is.
Tonight, after Michigan's Republican-led legislature rejected Governor Whitmer's request to extend a state of emergency declaration, Governor Whitmer issued a new executive order extending the declaration until May 28th. Hundreds of people demonstrated outside Michigan's Capitol building today. That's a couple of hundred people in a state of 10 million people. Those people were protesting measures Governor Whitmer put in place to keep those people safe from the spread of coronavirus. Many protesters carried assault weapons and had pro-Trump signs and pro-Trump campaign paraphernalia.
So a lot of podcasters don't know this, but even though Squirrel here tends to be more on the moderate side as a millennial, he's very pro-Second Amendment. And so he really does not like this idea of characterizing peaceful protests as being folks that are bullies with assault rifles, when all they're doing is they're participating in a protest. They're exercising their Second Amendment rights.
It's legal in Michigan to do that.
It's legal to do so. It's illegal, right? They did nothing wrong, but MSNBC, oh my God, their heads are exploding.
Yeah, so a lot of things is the way they're framed, the way they frame how they're reporting on what's happening in Michigan is kind of, because as I said, words have power. They do. So if you replace a word that's like more neutral based, it's like, okay, that gives me information. I can make my own opinion. But the way they were using the words, it was very charged. And it's like, oh my gosh, there's an assault at the Michigan State Capitol building. It's like,
no, actually there wasn't.
No, right. No. And you see that.
They're protesting. Anything. Yes, they're not happy.
No, they're not happy.
And you're talking about a small group of people that they took pictures of, MSNBC did, to show, see how angry they are? Guys, that was like 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 people. But they have a right to be angry. Go ahead.
And granted, though, seeing a protester peacefully, but standing there with like an AR type rifle or whatever million types of rifle that people want to call assault weapons, whatever, which, we can get into that whole debate later. But basically, that's a powerful message. I see a guy that's not a cop holding an AR at a protest. I'm like, I'm going to look at him and say, all right, I got a good vibe. He doesn't pose a threat to me. He doesn't look bad. But
you know what's interesting is, what I saw? Tell me if you saw this too.
Okay.
What I saw is that the Second Amendment works and that our Constitution works in Michigan, because I saw folks with these weapons, right? Yep. Which they lawfully were able to possess.
Yep, and as long as they keep visible and
they went on Capitol grounds. They were protesting. Mm-hmm. They were in some cases. Granted, a couple of guys. I only saw 2. Were yelling at the police and saying, and the police were standing down as they should have, because no one was acting in a way that was actually going to hurt someone. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, believe me, MSNBC and CBS and NBC and CNN would have covered it. And to me, what I saw was, I said, you know what? That proves to me that America works because the people are in charge of this country, not the military, not the police. We're not a police state, not Governor Whitmer. The people are in charge, and what we saw is America working there.
And that's a small example that's relevant, because if you don't think a few months ago, remember what happened in Virginia, where there was a huge Virginia gun rights rally at the Capitol of Virginia? Everyone was packing, showing guns, every type of caliber, every type of...
And that was also legal.
That was legal.
It was legal.
And I bet the mainstream media was chomping the bit for something to go wrong.
For something to go
crazy
wrong.
Guy.
But did anything go wrong?
No, it was peaceful. There was no arrests. And it was a very diverse crowd. They were saying it's all going to be a bunch of white males that are all socially inept or whatever. But no, if you went there, there was a spectrum of diversity from ethnicity to also even political views.
Absolutely.
Some people were Democrats, some people were Republicans, moderates, independents. It was a whole thing, and it blew up their whole argument, which we're seeing here.
So Squirrel, MSNBC, you heard their version of what happened in Michigan. And now, of course, we have Michigan Commissioner Kim Gibbs, who went to the protest, okay? She's a Royal Oak, Michigan Commissioner, Kim Gibbs. She's a Republican. She went to the protest and exercised her right of free speech and assembly, and she was censured because she went to the protest by her fellow county commissioners and I think the county executive, if I'm correct.
Interesting.
We have her version of what happened, and here is the clip.
Well, that was the reason for my censure. It's all partisan politics. I attended a rally to support small businesses and to get Michigan going again. Mayor Fournier and the Democrat Commission majority seized on this opportunity to retaliate for my opposition of their financial mismanagement of the city. I was censured by a kangaroo court. I violated no law or no executive order.
So that's Royal Oak Commissioner Kim Gibbs saying that the mayor of Royal Oak censured her. It was purely political because this goes back to the D versus R about what. So Democrats, generally speaking, want you to obey and stay home and do nothing. And Republicans are saying, you know what? It's been 6 weeks. Enough already. We want to go back to work. And we think that we're adults here and we can make our own decisions. And oh, by the way, we're not seeing the data to support the fact that one size fits all. Go ahead.
So, what happened to this commissioner was definitely partisan politics. It was very petty. She was exercising her rights to do so. She was probably representing maybe her constituents from her county because of Royal Oaks, because they may have not been able to go, but she was able to go. So she went and said, I'm representing this part of these people, these constituents. They want to go back to work too. And we see partisan politics and there's a litany of examples, but her being censured makes no sense.
Especially during this time of a pandemic, because you cannot use a pandemic, you cannot use an emergency as an excuse to limit the First Amendment. And the right of assembly. You just can't do it. I'm sorry.
And as you said, as adults, there's a level of expectation of leveraging common sense, but unfortunately sometimes people don't leverage common sense, and there's plenty of examples of that too. But I think we need to get back to work, but need to do it in a right way. Well, I think what happened in Michigan, like from the get-go, giving a definite date, hey, we're going to reopen things at this date. Oh, wait. It's getting to the deadline.
And then she extended the deadline.
Yeah.
She said they were going to open up. She at least intimated that she was going to do so and said, you know what? I'm going to extend the emergency declaration for another 28 days until the end of May. No wonder people are upset. I mean, the end of May?
Yeah, and it's impacting their lives and their wallets and stuff like that. And also maybe try long-term, conspiracy would be like, oh, we're going to get more people on the government dole or because the government because they need money and we can give them money because we have all the tax revenue. But one thing is, though, from the get-go, if a state wanted to keep people like, hey, this is going to be a while, we're not going to reopen the state. You may not like my comment here, but
that doesn't matter. That's why we're doing this.
I'm just prefacing, just saying. I like what Maryland Governor Larry Hogan did. He said we'll go back to normal once the state of emergency is lifted with no definite date. So the expectation is saying we got to wait till the governor and his litany of opening Maryland back open committee.
It needs to be science-based.
Yes.
And one size fits all does not work.
No. The different states, different problems.
I have no doubt that there are certain counties in Michigan and certainly Detroit that are affected and certain areas that are not. We also know that certain demographics are affected and others are not. And it's skewed in one way versus another. And we also know that high-density areas are affected more than areas that aren't. So we're adults, guys. We can figure this out. Extending another 28 days in Michigan makes no sense. And by the way, if you want to think that it's just one-sided, where someone gets censured, even though it was the Democrat mayor who censured Commissioner Kim Gibbs for going to the protest, there's also a Democrat lawmaker. She's a state lawmaker. Her name is Karen Whitsett. And she's the same person who got hydroxychloroquine when Trump was arguing with the press about whether or not it was effective or whether or not we should even have the right to ask for it to save our lives, whether or not it was proven to be effective or proven to at least help a little. And she basically said, you know what, Donald Trump literally, the fact that he pushed this medication actually saved my life. Well, Karen Whitsett opposes Governor Whitmer's order to extend the emergency declaration for 28 days. And so what do you think they did to her?
Censured.
They censured her. They censured her. Her own party censured her. By the way, that's censure means shut up. That's what censure means. Okay? So think about this for a minute. There's an emergency order that says you can't protest and shut up. And then we have the Democrat Party in Michigan saying to their fellow Democrat, as well as to a Republican, shut up. You can't talk. I'm sorry. I have a problem with that. Here is Karen Whitsett. We have a clip of her, and here she is.
We have to celebrate the victories. Do we still need testing? Yeah, we still need it. Am I voting to support us opening up our state? Yes, I am voting to support us opening up our state because I do feel that there's too much power given to the governor right now, and it's not being used properly.
And that's because the Republican legislature said, let my people work. Open up. So go.
So what I always historically have noticed is it seems that the Democrats rely on full party unity with every single member, where if one goes off the plantation or the reservation or whatever we want to call it now, or actually speak their own thought and hold their own opinions, and that's not the kowtowing to the Democrat political agenda, they do get censured, or they get removed from positions of power within the party, within committees of any legislature from every level of form of government in the United States. Whereas in the Republican Party, what I've seen is we almost embrace independent thought. We may not agree all the time, saying, where are you going with that? That don't make sense. And it's kind of sad because it actually stifles any creativity of solving any issues, or actually saying, hey, we can do this. We just got to do it in a measured way of reopening our states.
So the Democrat Party in Michigan in the 13th Congressional District actually released a statement, and they said, among other things, that Karen Whitsett has chosen to drive a wedge between herself and the Democrat Party. And she continues, and with the use of her incendiary words, to attack fellow Democrat leadership in Michigan, while publicly supporting the Operation Gridlock protest. And then she went on, Karen Whitsett went on to say, well, I guess this is teaching me to be in my place, but it's not going to stop me, she said. So in other words, the Democrat Party in Michigan is saying, shut up. Yep. You don't have a right to free speech.
And that statement that you read from the Democrat Party of that district, those were incendiary words. They could use different words, but they were trying to pack a punch. And you can see that I just get a kick out of how people use words to get a point home or to drive something. And it's like, that's not necessary. Why do you got to be that way? Why do you got to convey this message to me? We're both adults. We can come together and find a compromise. That's me still holding on to some semblance of hope of actually have functioning government on the national level.
Speaking of let my people work, Rick Savage, he's a Maine restaurant owner. By the way, restaurant owners across America, they are just getting hammered.
I'm doing my part.
I mean, they're just getting hammered, let's face it. And so many of these restaurants are going to go out of business, I have no doubt in my mind, through no fault of their own. And Rick Savage owns a Maine restaurant. He was being interviewed by Tucker Carlson. Yep. I'm sure you saw this, but we have to replay this because it's very apropos for this podcast, Let My People Work. And basically, this restaurant owner said, you know what? The governor of Maine said, you can't open back up. He said, I don't care. I'm doing it anyway. And he said it on national television. And we have this clip. And here it is.
People are everywhere. I've got a restaurant that seats 250 people inside, a deck that seats 100, a 2,200 square foot patio. So I could put people at 6 foot space in everywhere and get open back up for business. So if each person does that in the state of Maine and tailors their business for what works, and people feel comfortable coming in, come in. If they don't feel comfortable, call us and we'll deliver it to your car. If you want to go sit on the deck, sit on the deck. You know, we've tried to call the governor. You can't even get a hold of them. The lawmakers are left in the dark, both Republicans and Democrats. She's doing this all rogue on her own. So we've had enough of it. We're encouraging all businesses in Maine to open up.
I love this guy. We're encouraging all businesses to open up. And let me make something really clear about what he said. I have to repeat this. He said, I have a really large restaurant. People can come in. They can order their food, then they can take it out on the deck and eat it outside in the sun, and
6 feet apart.
And they can social distance. In spite of him being incredibly responsible and saying it the way it is, and saying I just want to open up my restaurant, the governor of Maine, having seen that, shut him down. And you know how she shut him down? By revoking his liquor license and his business license, his ability to do business.
That is petty politics. There.
That's how disgusting. That's how disgusting.
And that's in
that
Maine.
governor is. That's in Maine.
Maine's usually like, hey, do whatever you want to do, man.
Yeah,
that's
live and let live, be free, and all that stuff.
Maine's a great. I love going up there.
It's a beautiful place, but obviously they have a governor who's a tyrant.
Yeah,
a complete tyrant.
Bring back Governor LePage.
Absolutely.
But yeah. So on this, so when I mentioned before we ran the clip saying I'm doing my part, what I meant by that was saying I'm able to go do the online ordering for like where someone picks up my food for me from my local restaurants.
Sure.
I can support them and enjoy good food I like from the local area. But yes, no, what his plan of action was actually a conversation I had with my father not too long ago, was saying once we're slowly reopening these states and things can go back to semi-normalcy, a lot of the restaurants are probably going to be remanded to be saying
50% capacity. Actually, today, by the way, I saw something as recently as today that said 25% capacity for the initial soft openings, and then they would gradually over 2 months go to 50% capacity. Now, if you're paying rent for 100% of your space, but you can only use 25% of it.
Oh, in a city too?
You're not going to be in business very long, just saying.
Yeah, no, not at all. It's going to be very bad.
So good for this Maine restaurant, Rick Savage, for putting his finger in the governor of Maine's eye, because she deserved it. It's disgusting. By the way, the restaurant's massive.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful open countryside, semi-mountain. It just looked beautiful. It just looked really beautiful. There's no reason why he can't open.
Yeah.
So another kind of weird story in Florida.
Hey, Florida.
Daniel Ohlfelder, he's a Walton County, Florida lawyer. He's also a protester. He dresses up as the Grim Reaper and decides, of all places in Florida, to walk along the beach because the Governor DeSantis of Florida, opened up the beaches and, of course, requested social distancing, no chairs, no furniture on the beaches, because obviously you're touching all that stuff, and then maybe someone else would come up and use the same chair, and then they would touch it. So a lot of safety precautions have been put into place.
And
nonetheless,
common sense.
And common sense, thank you. Common sense. Wow, this is America. We can actually use our brains. In Florida, Daniel Ohlfelder, he's the Walton County lawyer. He's dressed up as the Grim Reaper. And he walks throughout the beaches. And we actually have a clip on this, but first to set it up is they have a reporter talking about this guy. They interview him. He's going to start talking. Then the reporter signs off. It's really hysterical because he's so concerned. He wants to remind people that going out on the beach is going to cause death. And here he is.
Make a point that we need to, I think it's premature that we open our beaches. I'm a huge proponent of public beaches, and I've been fighting for that for years, but I think that the danger of bringing all the people here to our area and spreading the virus, and I think it's going to prolong the recovery we have, and I think that we should take better measures, and it's drawing people from all over the world to our beautiful beaches. It's too soon, and it's not appropriate.
Thank you, Daniel. Now, Daniel is going to be beginning his protest right now, and he's going to be at a bunch of other Walton County beaches throughout the day. We're going to have his full story and how people are reacting later tonight on News 13. Reporting live in Miramar Beach, Faith Graham, News 13, Panhandle Strong.
And so Daniel Ohlfelder, he is completely dressed from foot to head to foot in the Grim Reaper outfit. It's really creepy looking.
Gonna be really hot
and he's got the big,
sun.
The big thing. What is that thing
scythe.
called? The scythe. Okay, thank you. And he walks around with that. And he certainly doesn't. He says he's concerned. Look, do you not think these people can figure out the fact that on their own that they decided to go on the beach? We're in a pandemic. There is a risk involved. Even going to the grocery store and Walmart and Home Depot, which apparently people don't have a problem going to.
Oh, no,
But
I know. A lot of people have been going
the
out.
beach is worse. It's really scary to go on the beach. I don't think so.
Yeah, so that's kind of a weird sword to die on for this guy, because honestly, you did make a good point. Like the grocery stores, hardware stores, liquor stores, hell, even gun stores, which is pretty funny. So like,
and Squirrel likes that.
Yeah,
he's a 2A guy.
Yeah.
And a moderate. I'm not sure how that works.
Did you say 2A or 2A?
I said 2A.
I was like, wait, what?
No, I said 2A.
Second Amendment. There we go. Clarification needed for that one. Didn't know where you're setting me up on that. But anyway, so yeah, like I'm cognizant when I go to the grocery store and liquor store, like where my hands are touching. Like if I have latex gloves. I wear my N95 mask because I was fortunate enough to be gifted one, so that was kind of cool.
You mean when you go to the grocery store? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, when I go to the grocery store, I have to wear an N95 mask.
Tell me if you're in Florida and it's 80 degrees outside that you're not going on the beach.
Oh.
I mean, come on.
I'm not a beach guy, I'm more a mountain guy, but
But tell me if you're in Florida.
If I'm in Florida,
right.
yeah, I'd probably go out.
And it's 85 degrees. It's beautiful. And the weather obviously is nice. You're not going to, of course, you're going to go out on the beach. Same thing in California.
I would find an open spot that's 6 feet away from everybody and just mind my own business.
Absolutely. But of course, Michelle Obama, let my people work. No, Michelle Obama says, and again, this is a pure Democrat versus Republican thing. Generally speaking, I really shouldn't say pure. Generally speaking, it seems Democrat versus Republican. Republicans tend to want to go back to work. And Democrats who live more in urban areas, which are
harder hit.
They're harder hit, tend to want to extend the quarantine.
Yeah.
All right. So, but Michelle Obama says to everybody, she does a PSA, public service announcement, and says, stay home. And meanwhile, Barack Obama goes out and plays golf, and there are pictures of him doing it.
Well, I do have people, that's true, but I know some people do go golfing still. That's a weird sentence for me. I actually have friends that actually went golfing.
It's a squirrel move, that's okay.
It is. But anyways.
Here's the thing. Golf courses in many states are shut down. And the fact of the matter is that it just seems, it doesn't really matter. It's the optic.
Oh,
right?
yeah, very.
If you are rich and famous and connected to power, the rules don't apply to you. That is exactly what is wrong with this country.
Oh, yeah, we've seen that
that's
a lot of
why you
times.
see all of these protesters in California, in Michigan, in Maryland, across the country.
They don't have a rainy day fund that they can survive on endlessly for almost a year or two, unlike most rich people that if you had $1 million living through this pandemic, you are not without, you're great. You're with a silver spoon, you got everything going on. You can put your feet up and not care. You could say, I'm on a 4-month vacation.
Absolutely. So Donald Trump says that he has evidence that the coronavirus came from a Chinese lab, but he can't reveal it. This is big news, folks, out there in podcast land. It's huge news because even though you see it being reported over the past, 2.5 months that did it come from the wet markets in Wuhan or did it come from a Chinese lab? The question is we don't have direct evidence, at least until recently. It appears that there may be some direct evidence. John Roberts asks Donald Trump about this issue, and Trump says something that is new. This is really new because, it would be easy to miss this if you were listening to the TV clip, or if you happen to be listening on YouTube, or even if you were listening to the press conference, you might have missed the fact that Trump suggests the virus may actually have been engineered. He suggests, doesn't say so. We have a clip on this. Listen carefully. Here it is.
You will soon have information on where this virus originated. The Director of National Intelligence today put out a statement saying that they believe it was naturally occurring, it was not man-made. But
Who is that? Who is that said that?
the Office of the Director of
Yeah,
National
but
Intelligence.
who in particular? Who was the man that made that
It
statement?
was a statement that the ODNI...
Oh, he would know that, huh? National Intelligence. So we'll see.
That would be your
we're gonna
Director of
see.
National Intelligence. Rick
No, I
Grinnell is heading that.
think it's, you'd have to tell me who specifically, who made the statement.
The statement was just put out under the Office of the
Okay,
ODNI.
we'll see. I have to see the statement. I just haven't seen it.
But the question I had was, have you seen anything at this point
Because
to
we're
give...
looking at that, John, separately from,
Correct. But
we're looking at exactly where it came from, who it came from, how it happened, separately and also scientifically. So we're going to be able to find it.
Yeah, so also scientifically we're looking at it. And scientifically means, and somewhat of a buzzword, it means, was it engineered by human beings? Was it actually created to hurt people? Was it created to wreak havoc? Was it created to kill people? Thoughts on this, Squirrel? This is big news.
Yeah, it is news. So I'm on the fence right now. I'm wait to be seen.
We don't know.
We don't know. That's the thing. So,
but with the president certainly giving up some information.
Well, that's also President Trump, how he speaks. Like he kind of, when he goes on his own kind of tangent, like I do sometimes, I may say things that may
Squirrel
not.
on tangents?
Oh, who would have thought that? That sometimes, no offense, I have issues sometimes when Trump goes on a tangent and it's not necessarily polished, and because you're the mouthpiece for the United States, kind of, and it's like you're saying
He
this.
goes on tons of tangents. There's no doubt.
It causes some confusion. It's like, well, what's true? Is he giving some of those tidbits? Okay, so we're working with that. It was just the wet markets and how those things are run, or it was the lab in Wuhan that they were messing with the coronavirus strain that created COVID-19. Somehow it got released or infected one of the lab technicians.
But that's the question. Those are the questions that John Roberts, he was asking President Trump. He was asking those specific questions, but in a great deal more detail now that intelligence reports, little by little, are being released to the news media and to the American people. So Roberts asks Trump, continues to ask him the same question, and Trump basically says, I can't tell you about the origins, which is intimating that he actually knows everything about the origins. We have a clip on this, and here it is.
Are you suggesting that maybe you have some evidence that this was not a naturally occurring virus?
We're going to see what it is. You're talking about the virus and
Correct.
where it came from?
Yeah.
No, we're going to see where it is. We're going to see where it comes from. And, look, you know every theory. You had the theory from the lab. You had the theory from many different, the bats and the type of bat. And the bat is 40 miles away, so it couldn't have been here and it couldn't have been there. And there's a lot of theories. But, yeah, we have people looking at it very, very strongly. Scientific people, intelligence people, and others.
And what gives
and we're going to put it all together. I think we're going to have a very good answer eventually.
And what gives you
and China might even tell us. China may tell us.
And what gives you a high degree of confidence that this originated from the Wuhan Institute of Virology?
I can't tell you that. I'm not allowed to tell you that.
What gives you a high degree of confidence that this came from the Wuhan Institute of Virology? And Trump says, I can't tell you. So he knows.
Well, only time will tell, but for sure.
No, he knows.
Okay,
he knows. I mean, the top security people, military people, intelligence people in the United States of America, as well as all of our allies.
Yeah, the Five Eyes.
Yes. And explain what that is.
So the Five Eyes is basically think NATO, but for intelligence agencies, where it is the UK, the United States, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. All those intelligence agencies work closely together, and they're now sharing more information, and they're definitely going to the route of getting more intelligence and sharing about what how this virus spread, who knew what, knew when, where it was, where did it come from, running down all the theories with all their intel feeds. But on top of that, the people that bungled this for the whole entire world, still the Chinese government.
Absolutely. So compare and contrast that squirrel. All right, notwithstanding your thoughts of Donald Trump or the race or what have you in terms of the race between the Democrat and the Republican, put that aside for a minute. Just think about two individuals running against each other.
Yep.
Forget about the R and the D.
Yep.
And here is exactly 1 year ago. Exactly 1 year ago to the day. All right, here's Joe Biden talking about the China threat and talking it down. And here is the clip.
China is going to eat our lunch? Come on, man. They can't even figure out how to deal with the fact that they have this great division between the China Sea and the mountains in the west. They can't figure out how they're going to deal with the corruption that exists within the system. I mean, they're not bad folks, but guess what? They're not competition for us.
They're not competition for us. They're not bad folks. So that was Joe Biden, exactly, squirrel, 1 year ago today. China's not a threat. They're not bad folks. They're not going to eat our lunch.
Joe Biden can go sit down and eat his own lunch, because honestly, China will eat his lunch if he ever becomes president, because the way he's handling his campaign right now and all his little bungling missteps with his phrasing and etc., it's kind of concerning that he's the Democratic nominee for president. Right now, it seems like we should stay the status quo for another 4 years, but time will only tell with that. But yeah, so if you think the Chinese government or the China as a country is not a threat to not only us but the free world, you need to reevaluate what you've been listening to or re-ingesting, because honestly, he's been in office for 40 years. Yeah.
And he has overseen
a lot of things.
A lot of bad things, including the wholesale export of American jobs to China. And this is what he said 1 year ago today. So as recently as 1 year ago today, he's basically saying China is not an issue whatsoever. And once again, it doesn't matter. Take the R away and take the D away and say, this guy versus this guy. This guy believes in realpolitik and says it the way it is about China and says they are our adversary. And here's a guy over here saying they're not our adversary. They're not even a competitor.
Yeah, and I think I alluded to it a little bit, but yeah, no. So right now, China is our threat and adversary. They want to be the top global power. Him saying they're not they haven't figured out how to move to the mountains to the west and take over the South China Sea. They're already doing. They're building artificial islands, militarizing with airstrips and bunches, and they're also
Spratly Islands, right?
Yep.
Spratly Islands.
And it's causing concern for Japan, Taiwan, and all the other island nations. But also, China's influencing the smaller island nations like Tonga and the Solomon Islands with financial means, but eventually maybe try to get a military presence there so they could harass our shipping lanes and also global trade. And on top of that, our Navy, because we operate there and have military alliances with a lot of the countries that actually are in that region. On top of that, he should read, and this has been project's been going on for a few years now. It's called the Belt of Pearls, and what the Chinese government is going to all these third world countries and basically saying, hey, we'll build you a state-of-the-art seaport as long as you give us a 99-year or a 999-year lease. I forget what it is, but it's still significant for military presence there. We can put our ships there. We can do whatever we want there. And not only seaports in these third world countries that don't have any like maritime purposes quite yet or industry. It's new highways, new railways.
But they want access to all of their natural resources. The
Yes.
Chinese do. That's the key.
And then the highways and railways is connecting China to Europe to redirect trade away from the United States.
And this has
and the rest of
clearly
the
been
world.
going on for decades,
It's
right?
the long game.
Decades.
And
they are playing the long game. And then Joe Biden is literally saying, well, they're not a threat.
Yeah.
They're not a threat.
There's a disease of short-sightedness that I've seen with our government through several years. I haven't lived a few decades yet.
You're a millennial.
I'm almost to 3.
Too young.
I'm almost to 3.
Yeah.
But,
How old are you, by the way?
27.
27. Okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
almost
no.
there. But basically, just it's asinine. It makes me get upset because I'm not in a position of power to say, hey, we gotta stay the top dog in this world or work with NATO and our allies, because honestly, we've seen what happened with the World Health Organization. They blew it up.
This is why this is a good conversation between you and I. You know, you being the millennial, me being the boomer, because you're the one millennial in Mark and the Millennials who is much more moderate. The other millennials are either conservative or they're libertarian leaning. You're the more moderate, and you've never been like a huge fan of Donald Trump, and that's why I took away. I'm not saying that you're anti-Trump, but you've never been a huge fan of him,
No.
and you've expressed that repeatedly on this podcast, and that's why I said take away the D, take away the R. You have, when in an election, there's a binary choice. Is this guy or it's this guy or this lady or this lady, is right? And it's either or.
Yeah, and to that point, I alluded to when I started on the little tangent here, is that I think we need to stay the status. As it stands now, we should stay with the status quo. So
Joe Biden, of course, that was a year ago, that clip,
Yes.
that China's not a threat. Come on, man. So, of course, we played this last podcast because it's funny. We're going to do it again because he just said a couple of days ago that we need more economic intercourse around the world. So basically, and I want you to listen to this carefully because this is not that much different than what he said a year ago, Joe Biden. A year ago, he's like, no, we just continue doing business as usual. Biden is kind of saying the same thing. And here he is saying this during a pandemic, right? But it's the way he said it, which makes it really funny, but doesn't change the fact that he still wants to do business with China. He doesn't want things to change. It really makes me wonder about who's behind him, who's sponsoring him, who's funding him. The deep state, I'm not really sure, but one thing's for sure, I don't trust the guy.
Yeah.
We got a clip on it, and here it is.
I would get much more engaged in the world. We can't step back. If, in fact, for example, we solve the problem in the United States of America and you don't solve it in other parts of the world, you know what's going to happen. You're going to have travel bans. You're going to not be able to have economic intercourse around the world. There's a lot. Look, when America goes alone, when America is first, it's America alone.
No, actually, when America's first, America is the leader of the world, which we have been. We are the world superpower.
Since World War II.
We have China, who wants to be the superpower and wants to displace us as a superpower. Joe seems to be okay with that. He's saying, no, as a superpower, we're alone because of the fact that unless we give up our superpower status to someone else, then we're not going to be liked. What is it with Democrats always wanting to be liked by enemies?
I don't know. They like what I see with this is saying, oh, they're not our threat. They're not our adversary. Guess what?
He wants more economic intercourse.
Yeah,
though.
yeah. Well, what a phrase to use. Guess who tried to say someone was not our threat and adversary? Russia during the Obama administration. Look what happened now. They are annexing lands for defending ethnic Russians that were not really there until the 1950s when Stalin had his programs where he basically just supplanted Russians in these Soviet bloc countries and then exported out the natives.
Remember what Obama said to Mitt Romney? Obama said to Mitt Romney during one of the debates, he said,
oh yeah.
He said, Russia's calling. They want their 1980s are calling. They want their foreign policy back. And meanwhile, of course,
it blew up in his face.
It blew up in his face because they are and have been, since the founding of this country, an adversary. Have they been allies during the war? Yes.
We needed them. They needed us.
They needed us, but that was an ally of convenience. These are not people that necessarily share fundamental values.
And so was China at the time because it was still under the Nationalist Party under Chiang Kai-shek, but then
Chiang Kai-shek and the man was occupying China, of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then they lost their inner war with the communists, and they moved to Taiwan. That's why you have this whole deal right now going on.
But the fact of the matter is that Joe, when he says,
economic intercourse.
I want more economic intercourse, which basically, if you guys really listen to that carefully, other than the fact that it's hysterically funny, he's saying he really doesn't want things to change with respect to our international relationship, especially when it comes to economic trade with China. And he's okay because I have no doubt that he and his family have gotten phenomenally rich from being in office for 40 years during the course of time when we wholesale exported American jobs and industries to China.
I'm waiting for his next book deal where he gets a couple million off that. But on top of that, one last...
After he loses, hopefully.
Hopefully, but one point is, though, this pandemic, this virus, this whole situation we find ourselves in, it should be a reevaluation of the status quo of the economic discourse of...
Well said.
Of how the world is working economically with China controlling the means of production. I think we need to invest, even though our products may be more expensive, is that we need to improve our ability to manufacture goods.
Well said.
Even more so that the goods that China manufactures, we need to manufacture
Every
here.
once in a while, man, Squirrel gets it together and he's got like a super pithy and cogent. No, actually, that was really good. It is.
Yeah.
This is the time in American history with the pandemic that every single American, regardless of party affiliation, should truly be reflecting about what it means to be an American, not what it means to be a Democrat, not what it means to be a Republican. We can all of us, by the way, including me, can look at the President of the United States and say, oh my God, the guy is so prone to mistakes and malapropisms and you name it. But the fact of the matter is presidents are made in history, I believe, they're made for their times. And this particular president was made for this time. How it happened 4 years ago that he got elected during this great pandemic and during this great challenge with another communist basically enemy is just remarkable. And so hopefully you're right, Squirrel. Americans will sit back and reflect and say, what does it mean for me to be an American? Not what does it mean for me to have my guy win? And because if the wrong guy wins, I think we could lose our country this time for good.
And that's why I say with the current administration, we should hopefully keep our status quo at that time.
Absolutely. So next up, we have the dumbest bill in America. Yes, it's the dumbest bill in America. And Mr. Assistant Producer Christopher Hopkins, do we have a lead up? Of course. And here it is. Dum 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 dum. And the dumbest bill in America is, wait, ready for it? Banning highway billboards. So technically it's banning new highway billboards, but nonetheless banning them, but it's not what you think it's for. It's not because the billboards are going to be banned because they're unsightly or ugly or you just don't like what they, you just don't like the way they look, if you will. So let me tell you what's happening here in Louisiana. State Senator Conrad Appel, Republican from Metairie, Louisiana, introduced Senate Bill 211, and he's targeting billboards that demean truckers. What does that mean? So there are billboards apparently all over the state of Louisiana that are rented by trial lawyers. And the trial lawyers put these billboards up that say, "Have you been injured by a trucker?" So if you're a trucker and you
Ambo chasers.
Yes, yeah, the ambulance chasers, absolutely. So if you're a trucker and you haul stuff, no matter what it is, apparently the truckers have very large insurance policies, which pay off big for the trial lawyers. So State Senator Conrad Appel, Republican of Metairie, Louisiana, introduced the bill, Senate Bill 211, because he said, quote, he introduced the bill so that people couldn't see the messages on billboards. So he wanted to cancel out any future construction of billboards because he didn't want people to see them. So it sounds to me like that's a free speech issue. He's trying to silence free speech, which is not a really good idea. Go for it, Squirrel.
No, yeah, it sounds like it's a freedom of speech. He's trying to litigate, restrict freedom of speech because that's as an advertisement. They're advertising that the billboards already exist, basically. Believe it or not, if you guys heard that, that's probably the Blue Angels flying over right now.
That
was yesterday? Oops.
No, that's
I've been
today.
in quarantine too long.
That's today. Those are motorcycle squirrel, but that was a squirrel moment. Very good.
I was like, oh no.
You can dub in squirrel for that one, I'm sure.
Please do. That'll be good. That's a good one.
The dumbest bill in America is banning new highway billboards. Go for it. Go, Squirrel.
Yeah, no, so freedom of speech issue right here. I understand what he's trying to do, but I think he's doing it the wrong way because that's going to open a whole can of worms. And also,
so what would be the proper way? So the trial lawyers are wreaking havoc on truckers in Louisiana.
Yep.
They're doing so in such a way that the truckers' insurance rates have increased, their premiums have increased by 100%. So what should we do to fix this problem? Do we ban billboards and stop free speech?
No, I think prior to this recording here, we kind of talked about it a little bit, is that we're actually reform how tort reform.
Yes, rein in the trial lawyers and start a conversation about tort reform.
Sounds like we need to rein in the lobbyists too while we're at it.
But instead, State Senator Conrad Appel, Republican of Metairie, Louisiana, wants to limit what people are seeing.
Yeah.
And in so doing, puts a bill in to ban. It is censorship. And it's no different than, of course, this idea of what Governor Whitmer's doing, is saying you can't assemble, you can't have free speech, or we're going to censor you. You can't talk, or we're going to censor you.
Hey, as long as people are practicing social distancing and the guidelines set forth by the medical experts and professionals, there you go. Do what you need to do.
And so this bill, this dumbest bill in America, banning new highway billboards, reminded me a lot of the movie 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
Good movie.
It's a fantastic movie with Frances McDormand.
Yeah, Sam Rockwell.
Won all kinds of awards, by the way. And basically, to set this up, the mom, Frances McDormand, she lost her daughter. Her daughter was brutally raped and murdered. And the local police department was doing, by the way, it happened really close to her home. And the local police department really got upset with her because she rented 3 billboards. Thus the name of the movie, 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri, and basically said to the police chief on each of the 3 billboards, why haven't you solved this murder? What's going on? This kind of thing. So the whole community was mad at her, was angry at her. And they wanted her to take the billboards down, not unlike the dumbest bill, banning new highway billboards, because you don't want the trial lawyers to be able to have an opportunity to have their free speech. Rather than fix the problem, you're trying to limit free speech. So with 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, we have a clip on this. And this is when Frances McDormand first goes to the office to rent the 3 billboards and inquire about what can and cannot be said on the billboards.
This is a good scene.
And we have a clip on it. And here it is.
What's the law on what you can and cannot say on a billboard? I assume you can't say nothing defamatory and you can't say fuck, piss, or cunt. That right?
Or anus?
I think I'll be all right then.
I guess you're Angela Hayes' mother.
That's right. I'm Angela Hayes' mother.
She's Angela Hayes' mother, and she's just reminding him, that's who I am. That's why I want to rent these billboards. You're not going to tell me that I can take down. I have the right of free speech, and this is the United States of America. And really, when you think about it, this entire podcast and this entire pandemic is really about this issue of free speech. So that's why we're hitting State Senator Conrad Appel, the Republican of Metairie, Louisiana, with his Senate Bill 211 to try to limit free speech by putting a bill in to say no more billboards, because I don't like what they say. Good. Have the final say on this. Squirrel.
Just a dumb bill.
And that is the dumbest bill in America. And the final word from Mark and the Millennials. Thank you for joining Mark and the Millennials. This is Mark Fisher. And thank you to our millennial, Ryan the Squirrel Brady.
Hey.
And, of course, Christopher Hopkins, our assistant producer, and our producer, Adam Coutura. Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and our website. See you next time.